More than 100 years ago, in a lecture in Switzerland, Rudolf Steiner said, "The spirits of darkness are going to inspire their human hosts, in whom they will be dwelling, to find a vaccine that will drive all inclinations towards spirituality out of the people's souls when they are still very young. And this will happen in a roundabout way through the living body. Today we are vaccinated against a certain thing, but in future children will be vaccinated with a substance which they will certainly be possible to produce to make them immune so that they will not develop any inclinations towards spiritual life." Link to the full lecture and more materials from Rudolf Steiner in the description. Born in nowadays Croatia, he left behind a rich legacy of teachings and prophecies. The ways he taught the people and expressed himself were very similar to the style of the contemporary to him, Petър Dъnov. Although they never met in person in this world, apparently they did when they were making the scenarios for their incarnations, and they were aware of this. Both were truly angelic teachers, and especially those who are inclined towards Christianity may find them helpful. The quote I read earlier is a minute fraction of his prophecies, but I will not delve into the rest, because I will be only repeating the events foretold by other prophets, also genuine ones. Rudolf Steiner also spoke about the pivotal role of the Slavic nations in the future awakening. He said that although they are not particularly spiritual people now, they will be the ones to awaken first, because it is in their genes, it is inbuilt in them to absorb spirituality faster. He also called them the people of the East, and his native regions, the Germanic regions of Europe, he also kind of included in that group, actually, because when he spoke about the West, he always said that this is only really Western Europe and not Central. And the way things will be developing, according to him, is that the Slavic people will need the support and the tribute, like the rivers have a tribute. They will need this tribute of consciousness of the Germanic nations as well to be able to accomplish the task. It is interesting how he described gardening during the upcoming interesting dramatic period in Earth's history. He said in Europe it will be possible only in isolated spots, in kind of a monastic, secluded groups of people, while vast areas around them will be simply depopulated and totally arid. Although nowadays in the Germanic regions people are mostly devoted to drinking beer and have mostly forgotten his teachings, still a distant echo of them must exist, because amongst those who still read and honor his writings, his teachings, the fixation rate is much lower. The prophecies of the 18th century monk Avel Tainovidets were kept at a prominent place in the Russian Empire because he foretold with amazing detail and accuracy the future of the royal dynasty centuries ago. I will leave a couple of links in the description of this video where, if you wish, you can read what a kind of amazing prophet he was. And for the sake of keeping the YouTube content concise, I will include only the long-term prophecies for the entire land of Russia. Initially, Avel was thrown in jail when the authorities heard what kind of horrible things he is foretelling about the royal dynasty and the future of the country, the immediate future at that time. But later on, as all these things happened exactly as he told them, he was not only freed, but he was made one of the top advisors of the king. And that's why one of the discussions was well recorded and preserved in the archives for a couple of centuries. After the monk told the king that sadly he will not live long, and very soon the French will burn down even the very capital of Russia, which they did shortly after that, the king at least asked, but maybe after that, finally, maybe some of my successors will make the land great and the people will finally live in peace and prosperity. And the monk replied, but first he said, there are a few things which will have to pass before Russia really becomes great. And then he described the 2 world wars, and then the reign of blood of the Bolsheviks, and after that a period of lawlessness, undescribable moral decay, and then the worst, the bloodiest and most cruel of all chapters of the history, Iga Zhidovskaya. This is the translation of the exact phrase which is found in the old manuscript. The timing of the yoke, which he mentioned, is around the current moment. And only after that chapter is over, the monk continued, yes, finally, as you wish, dear king, yes, Russia will be great and people will live in prosperity and eternal peace. Here they have hired a group of ecumenical priests together with Catholics, and even bought and sold Orthodox priests to bless in quotes, of course, the flag for the army. And who is in the army? Russian people gathered against gunpoint and sent to be murdered by other Russians on the front lines. Pay attention at the symbolism on the blue flag. And as they travel to the slaughter fields, everything is provided for. Here they are boosting their morale. Here they bring even religious preachers for the benefit of the soldiers, of course, from the strange church without walls. I thought those are Orthodox lands, but anyhow, this preacher is uplifting their spirits by encouraging them to use dirty language.
What?
So what is happening nowadays in Russia? As the offices of the government institutions involved in collecting biometric data are overwhelmed by the hundreds of thousands of applicants who want to withdraw their biometric data and get out of the biometric system, just a few days ago, a new piece of legislation on biometry came to light in Russia, describing over 150 of biometric parameters, they call them, but according to alternative sources, these are probably just 150 groups of biometric parameters, each group containing probably many such parameters, and everybody in Russia above the age of 14 is supposed to submit them all by the end of the year, for which they will be rewarded with super-booper billing instant system of payments and many other things, which will make everybody so happy and so satisfied that even in the legislation it is already foretold that everybody will be satisfied. I think that means better you do get satisfied, because it's still a mystery what will happen to the adults, which show some signs of unsatisfaction, but as far as the children, they will be taken to isolation chambers for 45 days to be reformatted to be satisfied. Another piece of headlines news reads, Futuristic biotechnology to determine what do you think about the government. Be sure they will be implementing it shortly, Otrok Vyacheslav warned us during the last century. And as we hear reports from various parts of the world that they are actually under various pretexts simply killing off animals on very large scale, especially big farm animals which could be used as food. And by far the worst, the situation in this regard seems to be in Russia again. The government gangs arrive from one industrial farm for raising animals to another, targeting the biggest in the country. They declare that there is some sort of disease, although there is no disease and they don't even take any tests. And it is as simple as that. They just murder all the animals. And the extent to which they are doing it in Russia, yes, this is going to create starvation very soon, because if they continue, they will simply obliterate farm animals there. And yet another extremely disturbing piece of legislation from Russia. Of course, they could be similar in other lands, I just don't know, and they may not even advertise them so much when they accept them. So historically Russia, as all other countries, had mass graves and regulations for them in the times of war. But this new piece of legislation outlines in a grim way, with extensive detail, the project of preparing mass graves for 70% of the population in times not at war, and they're ramping up on it like crazy. In the legislation it is even outlined how the machines to build these mass graves must work at shifts, even at night. So why are they expecting 70% of the population to be annihilated during peaceful times? This is not explicitly mentioned, but another piece of legislation may shed some light on it, and that's about reacting to extreme situations in the country, or chances that such extreme situations may arise. Basically, it is fully in the hands of the local governments and mayors to decide whether there is such a chance or not, and if there is, that law about the emergency situations will be applied. It's quite scary. The people will be ordered to evacuate immediately. Parents possibly separated by the children, because if the children are at school, they have to be evacuated separately. And what people are allowed to take with themselves is toothbrush and something else of similar size. That's all. They should leave their houses opened for searches as they leave, and the government is assuring them that there will be no thieves, because the areas which will be evacuated will be, of course, fenced completely by the special squads. And since there won't be enough transportation for all people, of course, most of them will have to move in columns, and the legislation deals with that extensively. So the people should move in columns, one after another, and like this 50,000 in one column, then a bit of a distance, and then yet another column, and yet another column, one tank or whatever vehicle in the beginning and one in the end. And the people are allowed to stop every 1.5 hours for 10 minutes, and only then they will be allowed to go to toilet. They're expected to walk some 34 kilometers every single day. Obviously, under such circumstances, even in the beginning of the evacuation, they will already have plenty of material to use for their mass graves. The legislation deals extensively with the details of how the personnel will be urging the people and delivering them as soon as possible, and not a single mention of what will happen to the people who can't walk 34 kilometers every single day. And where exactly are they taking the people to is also a mystery, because currently there is no such infrastructure in Russia where they can house 70% of the population. I mean, they don't help people even in peaceful days, even when they are in extreme need. So no wonder that there are no provisions made in this very detailed legislation about how are they gonna feed or house the people. Although there is a mention that people per person, they will be given a place of 1 by 2 meters. And we are left to wonder, is this some sort of disgusting joke or the most cruel hint one can imagine, because they have thought through everything in detail, and yet for some reason they don't even mention what will be the destiny of these people afterwards. Again, there is no hint in the legislation that the people will be fed, and there is no infrastructure in Russia which can provide that. Of course, this is a bit of an extreme example of the dark fantasies of the evil spirits. And of course, they will not use this scenario to finish off most of the people on earth, because we know from the prophecies that God has allowed the devil to give trouble to the people to test them, but not too extreme. But having said that, and keeping in mind that not only in Russia, in other countries, they are ramping up and getting ready for the same stuff. What I'm showing now on the screen are some of the little evidences of it, by far not all. And because of that, please think twice when you listen to people who are telling you to ignore underlined, and not even listen to such scenarios. Are these people really your well-wishers? They may look very spiritual because they will be assuring you that with positive thinking you can avoid all that. But as we know, this is a lie. Terrible things happen all the time to people who have never imagined them, not even once. Most of the things you visualized in life never came to pass. You will regret so bitterly for listening to these spiritual impostors who are telling you to ignore the warnings. They will assure you that ignoring them is actually not falling victim to fear. So living in a rural area and being self-sufficient is fear and not reasonable precaution? If this is not reasonable precaution, then what is reasonable precaution? Then most likely reasonable precaution doesn't even exist. Spiritual imposters are urging you not to come out of your comfort zone and continue with city life. Under the current circumstances, this is not fearlessness, this is brainlessness. You will have nowhere to hide when they issue the evacuation orders. In Russia, they have already set up the testing stations and the vaccination centers for the new unknown disease. Everything is ready. And very informative emblem, by the way. Very honest. It belongs to one of the official departments of the US government.